Welcome to the Get Trauma Informed podcast, dedicated to unraveling the complexities of trauma, its pervasive impact, and the journey towards holistic recovery and realignment. If your radiance has ever felt muted, like I and thousands of others, you're in the right place to reignite your inner light. I'm your host, Wellness Coach Liz Blanding, and this is the Get Trauma Informed podcast. Well, on today's episode, we have an amazing guest here, and I can feel the joy already. I can't wait to get into our conversation. How are you today, Coleen?
I am doing so well. Thank you for asking.
Good. Well, you are in for such an amazing treat today. You know, one of Colleen's passions is to support women toward their pathway towards their fullest potential. Man, I think that's so amazing right there. I mean, who's in your corner to help you or help support you in your fullest potential? Colleen, can you talk a little bit about who you are and, why you bring so much joy into the world?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I would love to. So, hi, everyone. I'm Coleen Greco. I'm a joyologist. And what does that mean? Well, I created the term, so I get to say what that means.
Love it.
My guess, charter, if you will, is to really help women to whatever it is that they want to do, achieve that in life, but also make sure it's firmly rooted in joy. Don't do it because somebody told you should do it, or you thought that was the thing that you should be doing, but it's because that's what your heart is telling you want to do, and you are feeling personally fulfilled. And I work with women all of the time that are like, well, somebody said I should do this, or because my father was a doctor, I want to be a doctor, or but it's not really like their conscious decision. I really want to encourage them, like, we have one life to live. Let's do the things that bring us joy. And I'll caveat that in a second, actually. Let's do the things that bring us joy so that we can give the best version of ourselves to everybody we love. And the caveat part is, I mean, do I enjoy shoveling snow? No, right? Like, there are parts of my life that I have to do and don't really enjoy. But when the scales are tipped in the favor of joy, and I can center in joy in every part of my life, while I don't enjoy shoveling snow, I do enjoy the peace and tranquility that comes with being outside and doing those activities. So you can still firmly root yourself in joy, even if you're doing something that maybe isn't lighting you up.
I love that. I think you just did a paradigm shift, not just for myself, but I'm sure some of the other listeners as well. When you're saying, like, look at the joy in it. I never thought about peace but I love outside. So the peace that you have, maybe not dredging the duty, but actually like being in the atmosphere. So I love that. Thank you. So
Yeah.
let,
And I will say too, yes,
mhm.
we're not recording this in winter, but winter is one of those things that I deeply can't stand. And so, like, I love to use that as an example because a lot of people can relate. So I just want to point that out. We're not recording this in winter. This is real time.
Absolutely, absolutely, and and I'm glad you said that too, because that's one of the things I keep saying too about the winter is coming. The winter is coming, but stay out of that space of the winter is coming, and stay right here, right now, and enjoy the things that are in front of me, right? And then you just gave me
Mhm.
like, oh, let's dread it. You can think about some of the beautiful things of winter. So
Mhm.
as we start the podcast, we talk about what does get trauma informed mean to you.
Mm. So I feel deeply that trauma is something that everybody experiences at varying degrees. I mean, I will not sit here and say that I can compare to even some of the guests I've had on my show who have had years and years and years of like physical and sexual abuse. Okay. No, I have not had that level of trauma, but I also don't believe in comparative suffering, that, their trauma is theirs and mine is mine. But what I firmly believe is that trauma is, um, I want to say given to, but I don't want that to be a trigger for someone. So I'm
Right.
saying it gently.
Mhm.
I do believe that it is given to you because there is something that you are meant to either learn or teach other people. And when you embrace that trauma and look at it for what it is and what you are meant to learn, I firmly believe the body sends you signals that says, like, you need to be paying attention to this. We are overscheduled, overcommitted, completely distracted at all times as a society. And a lot of times, there are signals that our body is sharing with us to tell us, like, hey, pay attention. I was sharing with you before we first started. My cheeks have been burning all weekend long. So for the past 3 days, 4 days, I know I'm out of alignment. And if I would just slow down for a few minutes and question, where am I out of alignment? Where do I have to get back into alignment? The burning will immediately go away. It happens every single time. But I am so aware now and awake now because of my trauma that it has allowed me to really understand my body's cues and pay attention to them and go in that direction of joy.
That is so important. Everything that you've just said resonated so much. With one of the reasons why the Get Trauma Informed podcast is actually now a podcast, because I finally understood the different types of trauma and understood that my pain was not in vain. So it came out of my story, my lifelong story of trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma, and not even understanding what complex PTSD is, right? Not understanding what that was, and not understanding, you said something really important about triggers, not understanding why we get so angry when people would try to compare my accident to their accident and how they, were able to navigate and move through it. And okay, well, everybody's experience is different, but I love, love, love what you bring to the table when you talk about, you said awareness and awakening to it. And so understanding the triggers and what's going on with your body. I think that's going to resonate with so many people like it just did for me. I mean, and we're just a couple minutes in, so you already have you already are gifted in what you do, right? So share a little bit more about about your calling. I love calling and purpose, and how you are bringing such joy to other people and fulfilling their potential.
Trigger warning. Again, I always like to kind of preface that because I don't ever
Yes.
want to catch anyone off guard. But I want to be really gentle and I don't know, compassionate to people that maybe um, haven't realized that these things are happening for them, not to them. And that is I feel like once you grasp that, it's like such a game changer. But um, almost 7 years ago now, we're getting close to 7 years. My then 10-year-old son had a suicide attempt, and we were home. We were literally home. It wasn't like we were some absentee parent that took off for the weekend and
Right.
we didn't have a situation like that. We were literally home. We were actually the room below where it was happening. We were
Mm,
right there.
mm.
Um, but he was the most popular kid in his grade, star athlete. As much as you can be at 10, right? Let's just, I'm not saying
Yes.
he was getting ready to be drafted to the NBA, but like he was really good, like just naturally gifted as an athlete and just very well liked. Just one of those kids that has that magnetism about him that people just want to be around him. And his best friend was not quite like that. And I describe it as like a classic King of the Mountain scenario. If you ever played King of the Mountain growing up, or for people listening, right? It's like there's this big dirt pile. At least there was when I was growing up. It was a big dirt pile or like grassy hill. And people would stand at the top and try to knock the other people down. And there's only room for one at the top. And that's what happened is his best friend turned on him and bullied him and turned all of his friends against him
Mhm.
until it became too much. And the final straw was one of the moms of one of his friends called me and uninvited him to a birthday sleepover party.
Wow.
And when I told him that, it was like done. He was
Mhm.
absolutely done. He completely lost it. And
Mm.
and it's understandable. And I think, for an entire year, he didn't have a single play date. So at 10 years old, again, like think of what you were like when you were 10. I was
Right.
surrounded by all the neighborhood kids and always doing things, and he was completely alone. And initially, I didn't handle it very well. I ate and drank my way up to these weights that I hadn't seen since my pregnancies. I was so angry, so angry. I used to have these dreams that I would go over to the mom's house of the bully because she was my friend, for the record.
Mm-hmm.
We were close, or at least I thought we were. And
Wow.
I had dreams of going over to her house and getting arrested for verbal abuse because I was
Wow.
going to just rip her to shreds with my mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't do that. But I dreamt about it.
Right.
And
Right.
and we, after, a couple of months of realizing that there were no doctors or therapists that would help us. We live in Boston. We just never got a phone call back. I made hundreds of phone calls and
Wow.
realized that we had to heal him ourselves. And I realized I was not being a good role model by numbing my feelings. But I
Mhm.
didn't know what else to do. I had to be like decent enough to be able to take care of him. And decent is, if anybody knows what this type of journey is like, decent is about as good as it gets in the
Got
beginning.
it. Yeah.
You are living second to second. You're not thinking about, I say this a lot, you're not thinking about what to have for lunch. Like that's just like too far into the future. You are living second to second.
Right.
And as we tried to figure out what to do, I was on the rug right outside my office door, bawling my eyes out, saying, like, this is not my life, contemplating my own suicide, saying, I, I give up. I don't know what to do. And it
Right.
hit me then. I'm just going to love him.
Mhm.
I'm going to love him until I can't love him anymore. And then I'm going to dig deeper and find it in some tiny little pocket of my body, more love to give him. And we are going to heal through joy in the smallest of moments.
Mhm.
Whatever that is, as insignificant as it is. Like I was talking about, shoveling snow. I will
Right.
make that joyful,
Wow.
right? I will figure this out through joy. And that's what we did. And that's really how he healed, was we just loved on him, even when he didn't want to be loved. And we just discovered joy in everything. Eventually we got a dog and that helped, right? Because they're just
Mhm.
little baskets of love,
Absolutely.
little love
Absolutely.
factories. Um,
Yes.
but yeah, that was, kind of what then put me on my path to my calling, that if I can do this and heal myself,
Mhm.
I need to be able to give this gift to other women, because I know there are millions of women out there that feel exactly the way I do, that feel hopeless, that have not had those phone calls returned, that, feel like a terrible parent. Can you imagine? How can I not keep my kids safe? Like,
Right.
that's my number one job, and I failed at it.
My
And
goodness.
trying to remove that failure and that shame and say, like, no, I was home. We did the best we could. We were here. We were a unit, and it
Right.
happened anyway. So how can we use that and use that story for good? Instead of it
Yes.
happening to us, it happened for us. And now look at him. He was inducted into the National Honor Society.
Awesome.
His he just finished his junior year for his junior prom. There were 38 kids in that picture. You know, the picture on Facebook when everybody, is like in front of the limo or whatever they're taking.
Right.
He didn't have one play date for a year, and he was in a picture with 38 kids that love him, like deeply love him, and were part of his tribe. And now he's applying to colleges.
So
And
amazing.
yes, his room is an absolute disaster, but like that's really,
Right.
I'm so happy to have that as my biggest problem with him.
My goodness, my goodness. I was just sitting here and I was absorbing it as you were talking about it. And, and to see after just pouring that love in, I talk about filling your love tank. Me and I have 9 grandchildren, and we talk about, how we fill each other's love tank, and or we'll lay on each other and say, "Uh-oh, my tank is empty," and we'll give that love. And that's what you reminded me of when you talked about just love. And that is so important. That's such a key, love. And then the mindset when you talked
It is the
about
answer to everything.
Yes. And you talk about changing that mindset. I love it. I love it. And you already answered the question as to how has trauma empowered and inspired you?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Imagine driving down the road, enjoying a beautiful day when suddenly a tree jumps out in front of your car. Crash! In an instant, your life is flipped upside down, both physically and psychologically. That was my reality. I'm Liz Blanding, a certified holistic wellness and trauma recovery coach. In a time when, according to the National Center for PTSD, the epidemic of trauma is on the rise, 70% of adults in the U.S. have experienced some type of traumatic event at least once in their lives. That's 223.4 million people who could benefit from support on their journey to recovery. To address this, I launched the Get Trauma Informed podcast in March 2024. Our podcast offers free information, resources, expert advice, and stories of those who have overcome trauma and shifted from surviving to thriving. The podcast has the capacity to reach hundreds of thousands of people. I believe that by partnering with the Get Trauma Informed podcast, we can provide critical support to many more people who need it. Trauma was not their fault, but recovery is their responsibility. And with your support, we can help them to achieve it. Thank you for considering the partnership opportunity. I look forward to the possibility of working together to make a significant impact on trauma recovery. Email us at info@oasiswellnessctrs.com or contact us at 616-320-0703. Now we will return to our Get Trauma Informed conversation.
Oh, I'm like, bring it now. Like, if that came close to breaking me, and I imagine I still have my own story to tell, right? That did happen to him, although it did happen to us, but that was really like his story.
Right.
So I'm sure that I still have, my licks are still out there to get.
Yes.
But
yes.
I know in my heart that love is how you heal. And so regardless of what it is that is still out there for me, or behind me, like everything is happening with the ultimate of intentions, like the best of intentions, and all for good. It's all to get you to a better place. That the phrase that I anchored on during that time, someone sent me a book, and they don't know what to say, they don't know what to do, there's not much they can do, so they sent me a book. I was like,
right,
great, more work to do. So
right.
But for some reason I read it, and I really only read on planes. Like my brain works, I just can't like sit down and read. But for some reason I read it, and there was a phrase in it that said, trouble is your transportation. And I was like, wow. And it literally hit me right between the eyes. And I thought, okay, so if I hold on as tight as I can to that phrase, it will get me. I don't know why I keep envisioning like a monorail. Like the monorail is going to come, it's going to pick me up, and it's going to take me to Disney World, like the greatest place on earth.
The greatest.
Trouble is your transportation. Just hang on. And it is. It brings you to a better, far more beautiful place than you could have ever imagined or gotten to on your own. But you have to have that trust. And that's, at least for me, was not an easy thing to do. But I didn't have any other choice. I just felt like, I don't know what else to do because what I'm doing isn't working. So how about this other thing? And I just held on. And that phrase I repeated, millions of times a day, millions, over and over and over again, until it was all I could think about. And that's what got us through.
See, that's amazing, because you just touched me with that trouble is your transportation. And you said something a little bit ago. You said that, issues and challenges and trials, they're happening, they happen not to you, but for you, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's for you to propel you. And if you think about, like, go back and think about all the the little trials, and not little trials, but the trials and tribulations that we go through. And then you look back and you say, wow, it did get me to a different place. I couldn't see it while I was in the midst of it, but on the other side of it, wow. And I love what you said about you painted an amazing picture about just hold on, understanding this is your transportation. You know, that whole mindset shift gets you and propels you into behind you, it says, free your mind. And I think sometimes we don't understand. Those things, those type of things, it really inspired me. So great job on being that inspiration, right? But I love that. Let's talk a little bit more about the body signals, because I think that is a key point. I think we ignore it. Like you said, we're so busy, and so we ignore it. And sometimes our focus is on the people that we love around us, and we say we'll get to that, and before we know it, we've piled up so many things about getting to. So can you talk a little bit more about the body signals?
Oh, yes. Oh, these cheeks. Oh, if they could just,
Yes.
um, so it hasn't always been this way. This is in the last year that my cheeks will activate when I'm out of alignment. And I don't know why it's my cheeks. It may not be your cheeks. It might be your wrist. I have no idea. But the body sends signals, millions of signals a day. And we're just too busy or don't recognize that that is a signal in response to something. But there's two ways of thinking in my mind. There is the heart-centered way, listening to your heart, listening to your intuition and those bodily signals. And then there's the head. And so in my mind, happiness is when you're in your head. So happiness is in response to something. Like, of course, you must get 1,000 compliments about how you can rock a fedora hat. Like,
Thank
you
you.
can. Probably better than anybody I've ever seen, right?
Thank you.
And that probably made you happy, which is great. Like,
Right.
you should be happy. Somebody just gave you a compliment and that made you feel good. That's awesome.
Right.
But that's head-centered. Now, joy is heart-centered. And joy is knowing, without me even saying anything, knowing you look great in that hat. You own it because you know, like, you've got it. With the body signals, I find that when I am out of alignment, when my head and my heart are not on the same page, and usually it's your head is taking over. And I like to say your head is kind of like a squirrel. It's just always, well, what about, I don't know, should I do this other thing? And then maybe, well, what if and you go through like the crazy line of questioning, and
Right.
that's head centered. Heart centered is, I know, like they're more declarative statements like I am, or I know, or I'm going to. But your body is sending you these signals. And so when my head is questioning something that my heart has already decided is the thing, my cheeks burn.
Mm.
And it started on like Thursday or Friday. I think I know why. I just haven't, we had a really busy weekend and I haven't had enough quiet time to really sit with it and figure it out. And I'm sure once I do, it'll take me like a half an hour. But when I like am out of alignment, when I've allowed my head to take over, my cheeks will start to burn. And it is through the process that I've developed, it's called the SNAP method, where I can look at those limiting beliefs. I can look at those stories I'm telling myself that my head is recalling, that I know that those are just lies being served up on a silver platter yet again. And when I dismiss them and remove them from my line of thinking and get back into my heart, the burning goes away every single time.
That is
Yeah.
so good. I mean, that's so good to be that awake and that in tune, to be able to put yourself back in alignment, to consciously be able to put yourself back in alignment. And I think that's something, like you said, your method, the SNAP method.
Yes. And so let's just be honest that, 6 years ago, even I don't know if my cheeks were burning. If they were, I certainly didn't recognize it and connect it with me believing more lies. But I've done so much work on myself that I am so aware that it's like, it takes a second and I'm like, oh, there they go again. What did I just believe that is a lie?
Mm-hmm.
So going back to the story of my son, I did all that, excuse me, eating and drinking, right? And when I decided to get help to help lose the weight, because I had enough to do with just keeping my full-time job and trying to heal him and heal myself, I decided to work with a nutrition coach, and he helped me to lose some weight. And in total, I lost 52 pounds. But at this point of the story, I was about 35 pounds down and said, wouldn't you like to help me develop strategies so I never have to regain this weight? I'm not doing this work again. Like, I'm
Right.
kind of a one and done kind of person, right? Like,
Yes, I can
I
relate.
think that's why I don't gamble. I don't want to earn the same money twice, right? Like, it's just like once and be done. And he said, I'm not your therapist. And I was like, oh man, if you don't see the connection between mindset and nutrition, you are crazy. You have missed the boat. It's all
Yes.
mindset.
Mm-hmm.
The food is the weapon I chose. I could have chosen any weapon. I could
Right.
have been like a sex addict or a gambling addict or whatever. I just happened to choose food. So it's
Yes.
the mindset we need to work on.
Mm-hmm.
And so that day I went out and I was like, enough of you. I'm just going to figure this out myself. And I did. I developed the SNAP method, and I really feel like it just landed on the paper. I didn't really mean to develop it. I was just trying to help myself.
Yes.
And so it's the methodology for recognizing those triggers before they come and then removing them so that they no longer torture you. And so that's how you get back in alignment, is walking through the SNAP method.
Oh my goodness, that's incredible. I mean, you've snapped me into quite a bit of a awakening in different points of this. I mean, I can go back over and pull out. I have tons of notes, and I'm going to pull myself from everything that you have said today, because I knew
Oh,
when you said joy and I saw your beautiful smile, I said, oh my goodness, this is exactly what was needed. Something's needed right now. Right now. And as you're building the podcast and building the community and everything, you need that mindset shift. And so you've provided that wonderfully today. What would you say to someone that's facing trauma? I mean, we already said we're endorsing the SNAP method, right? Because that's very necessary. Because I think one of the things about in recovery, trauma recovery, what type of recovery you're going through, people feel like once you recover that's a one and done, but that's not a one and done, because life and things continue to happen. So what you just said, as far as the SNAP method, being able to have something to recover quickly, I think that's the piece that's missing. People say, man, or you feel like a failure because you're back in some type of a cycle, right? But if you have these type of tools like your SNAP method, like self-care, if you have those tools, you can pull yourself back quickly, and it is in a mindset. So again, what would you tell someone that is going through or facing trauma today, like right now?
ooh, okay. So Colleen the human,
Okay.
okay, that's who's going to speak. All right, Colleen the human would say, people will tell you you're not alone, and you're not going to believe them.
So true.
You just won't, because that's human nature. You truly are not alone. There are people like me and Dr. Liz and a million other people out there that are willing to just hold space for you to feel like you're not alone. When I feel out of alignment, I truly don't feel like there are many people I could call, which is really sad. I really wish my community would hold space for me the way I hold space for them. But it just doesn't work that way. And so truly understanding you are not alone. I go to God,
Yes.
and I really don't know what else to do. That's my answer. I just
Yes.
feel like that's what I'm told to do, so that's what I'm going to do, and it's worked out okay, right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And far better than I could have imagined. But don't downplay your trauma. But also don't let it define you. It happened for you for a reason. You may never know the reason. I may never get closure with that family. I've already resigned myself to the fact that I won't, and they will never understand what happened to our family. They just won't. And maybe they'll have their own like other tribulations in life. I would imagine we all do. But it's really important to not downplay your trauma and to really understand you are not alone. There are people and groups and books and all kinds of resources out there for you. I firmly believe one of the greatest healing tools, and people listening will probably roll their eyes when they hear this.
Okay.
One of the best tools is my journal.
Yes.
When you write that stuff down, number one, you're kind of like, you're just, what's the word I'm looking for? You like lower the intensity.
Yes.
You aren't adding fuel to the flame like you think you might. You're actually lowering the intensity. And there's a psychological connection between your brain, your fingertips, the pen, and the paper that you really can't replicate on a laptop. You can try, but there is a psychology behind it, and I'd do
Yes.
myself a disservice if I tried to explain it. But
Yes.
writing it down will get you to the truth faster than anything else I'm aware of. Because when we're actually speaking and our heads get involved, our head is trying to manipulate the truth and make us sound better and sound more like a victim and everything. But when you write, that gets broken. So try to just, I understand when you're in the middle of it, you're like, great, yeah, now I'm just going to sit and journal. Like, no, I'm going through something traumatic. It's like, it is worth the time to write it down. You will get to the truth so much faster, and it's so healing. I used to poo-poo it myself, and now it is the first place I go.
Oh my God. That was, you know what? I don't need to say anything further other than I have to maintain my professionalism and sit at this mic. But I mean, truly, I kind of want to jog around the room because you said so many amazing things. And I believe just, what you just said about the connection of your fingertips to the pen and writing it down, it really helps you to be actively working on your recovery, working on getting those toxic thoughts out of your system. And it's not just, circulating your system, you're getting it out. So that is an amazing active part of walking through it and seeing it for what it really is and not what our brain sort of distorts it, is what I received from what you said. I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours. I promise you. I promise you, you have so much insight and so much wisdom on the subject and the recovery part. When you talked about, so many things. I can't even pull out that trouble is your transportation. That one just resonated with me. If somebody wanted to get back in contact with you, how would they do that?
So Instagram is an easy way. That's how a lot of people will find me, at the Coleen Greco. Coleen is with one L. Or they can email me, Coleen@ColeenGreco.com. I would welcome a conversation with anyone that really just needs someone to listen. That's all we very often need. The answers are within you. You may not trust that at the moment, but the answers are there. And it's just a matter of finding them and then, encapsulating them and taking them with you as you're on your journey.
And Coleen, providing a safe space is so important. And I just wanted to thank you for that, because it's flowed through the podcast today. Just having a safe place for somebody in recovery, that is the world to them. And so I just applaud you for the work that you're doing. And I thank you for taking time out today to spend some time with us and pour your wisdom and your knowledge and your experiences with us. So again, I thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's time to buckle up. No more suffering in silence. Our Power Pack journey to recovery and realignment starts now. Remember, you were collateral damage on someone else's warpath. Trauma is not your fault. Recovery, however, is your responsibility. I'm your host, Wellness Coach Liz Blanding, and this is the Get Trauma Informed podcast.